My name is Lena Hart, and I'm 61 years old. For 30 years, people have known me as the calm woman who keeps the community theater running like clockwork. Today, they're about to see a different side of me, the one that learned every cue, every pause, every reveal from a lifetime backstage. Because this time, the performance isn't on the stage. It's right here in my kitchen. I lay a folder on the table, the edges still warm from the copier. Inside is a signed confession, Paul Ridley's signature, dated just 2 days ago. Paul is my husband. He was once the town's hero, a retired firefighter and treasurer for the Veterans Relief Fund, the man who preached honesty, brotherhood, and honor. Now has his name under a written admission of fraud and infidelity. I don't raise my voice. I let the paper speak louder than I ever could. The front door opens, and Paul steps in with Ava Brooks, my daughter-in-law. They freeze when they see the folder. Paul's face tightens. "You made me sign that when I was in shock," he says, his voice trembling between guilt and anger. "That's not justice." I look at him, steady and unblinking. "Then let's keep the cameras rolling." I answer, "Let everyone decide what justice looks like." I turn toward the viewer, my hand resting on the confession. "Tell me," I say quietly, "when a man signs the truth out of panic, does it still count as truth?" It started with the smallest ripples, numbers that didn't quite add up, and schedules that shifted just a little too neatly. Paul Ridley, my husband of 3 decades, began staying out late under the banner of fund reports for the Veterans Relief Fund. He said the board was demanding audits, but I'd spent enough years managing a theater's budget to recognize when someone was quietly moving decimal points. Around the same time, Ava Brooks, my daughter-in-law, began trading day shifts at the hospital for nights, claiming new surgical rotations. Suspicion is a dangerous script to write in your own head. So I didn't. I started collecting cues instead. Just like I would for a stage rehearsal. I logged receipts, parking stubs, timestamps on Paul's phone bills. I noted how Ava's perfume lingered on the passenger seat of Paul's truck and how her red lipstick turned up on coffee cups in our sink when she visited. Every line of data felt like a rehearsal note in a show I hadn't agreed to join. The break came one Friday evening. I returned to the community playhouse after hours to pick up a forgotten ledger. From the corridor, I heard laughter, low, intimate, and familiar. The light from the rehearsal room spilled across the hallway, and there they were, Paul and Ava, tangled in the wings behind the stage curtains, believing no one could see them. The irony nearly made me laugh. The same curtains I'd hung to separate illusion from truth were now framing theirs. Ava turned first. She didn't flinch or stammer. She looked me straight in the eye and smiled, a deliberate, knowing smile that sliced through 30 years of loyalty. Paul froze, trying to speak. But I raised a hand. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I simply looked around that silent stage and realized it was mine again. I stepped forward, my voice calm and clear. "You might want to finish your scene," I said. Then I turned off the spotlight and closed the door behind me. In the dark hallway, I whispered to myself, "The act begins now, and I'm the one calling the cues." In the days that followed, I didn't allow grief to cloud my mind. I'd spent too long teaching young actors how to separate emotion from execution, and now I had to live by that same rule. While Paul carried on pretending nothing had happened, I began drafting my own kind of production, one built from spreadsheets, account statements, and receipts. Every night, when he fell asleep, I opened my laptop and mapped each transaction like blocking a scene. The numbers told a story uglier than any affair. The Veterans Relief Fund was missing nearly $48,000, and our joint savings had been drained by another $27,000 in quiet, precise withdrawals. It wasn't carelessness, it was choreography. Each transfer timed to match a board meeting or one of Ava's so-called night shifts. I realized Paul hadn't just been stealing moments of passion. He'd been financing them with money meant for wounded soldiers and our own retirement. I met discreetly with the fund's compliance officer, an old friend who'd attended enough of my shows to know when I was deadly serious. I didn't accuse Paul outright. I simply laid down the figures, the matching dates, the ghost trail of missing deposits. By the time she saw the pattern, I didn't need to say another word. Her silence was enough to confirm I wasn't chasing shadows. I'd built my stage. Now I needed the perfect opening night. That came on a Sunday dinner. Daniel, my son, joined us. Oblivious to the storm gathering behind the roast and candles, I kept my tone soft as I pulled out a printed spreadsheet and laid it between us. Paul's fork clattered against his plate. Ava tried to smile, insisting the money had been borrowed to cover short-term costs. I could see her pulse racing under her necklace, the same one Paul had bought her for her birthday. Daniel looked between us, torn between disbelief and duty. "Dad," he said carefully, "you spent your life saving people. Does that give you the right to borrow from them too?" The question hung in the air like a spotlight no one could escape. Paul said nothing, only pushed back his chair and wiped his mouth with mechanical precision. I reached into the drawer beside me and placed a small velvet pouch on the table. Inside should have been Paul's engraved pocket watch, the one awarded for his service. It was empty. "When did you pawn it?" I asked quietly. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The silence spoke for him. And for the first time, I knew exactly how this act would end. When a liar loses control of the story, they find new ways to rewrite it. Within days of that dinner, Paul began calling old friends from the firehouse, telling them I was exhausted, unstable, and seeing conspiracies in every ledger. He painted himself as the patient husband of a woman unraveling after menopause. It was the oldest trick in the book: make the truth-teller sound hysterical until no one listens to her again. But I'd spent too many years managing egos backstage to fall for that act. The more he spoke, the more I documented. Every rumor he seeded, every call he made. I logged it beside my growing folder of evidence. Then I requested an interim audit from the Veterans Fund, making sure the inquiry was official and public enough that it couldn't vanish in whispers. By the time the auditors arrived, Paul's concerned husband routine began to look suspiciously rehearsed. He didn't stop there. Paul invited two of his old colleagues and Ava to our house one afternoon. Pretending to stage an intervention, they came with sympathetic smiles, ready to console the confused wife. I greeted them with coffee, sat them down, and projected the first page of the preliminary audit onto the wall. Numbers replaced sympathy in their eyes. I explained that every document on display had been obtained legally: bank logs, expense reports, hospital shift records, all public or shared accounts. Nothing illegal, just facts. Ava tried to interrupt, insisting she thought Paul and I were already separated. Her voice shook, and I saw the first crack in her confidence. I clicked to the next slide, screenshots of her texts to Paul, listing my daily schedule and Daniel's work trips. Each message ended with a tiny heart emoji. The room went silent except for the whir of the projector. Daniel stood in the doorway, home early, hearing his wife's voice echo from the speakers as I read the messages aloud. When the final one appeared, her note about his bonus hitting the account next Friday, he didn't move. He just took off his wedding ring and set it on the table. "Tonight," he said quietly, "you both can explain this to the detectives." Paul finally understood the play was over. But he hadn't yet realized there was another act waiting in the wings. The investigators from the Veterans Fund arrived 3 days later. They didn't storm in. They walked in quietly. The way real justice does, steady, methodical. And without warning, Paul tried to act surprised, fumbling through explanations about temporary reallocations and investment cycles. But when the officer handed him a printed ledger showing every misused dollar, his bravado cracked. For the first time, he looked small in his own living room. They questioned him for nearly 2 hours. By the end, he admitted to diverting more than $82,000 from combined accounts and the charities fund. He said he had planned to pay it back, that he only needed time. The officer's pen moved without pause. Intent or panic didn't matter anymore. The evidence was enough. When they left, they told him to expect a summons for a formal statement at the district office. The invisible handcuffs were already in place. That night, Paul came to me with tears in his eyes. He said he could make restitution if I kept the matter private, that an open hearing would destroy his reputation. I listened, silent, while he spoke of pride and shame, as if they were the same thing. Then I told him I wasn't seeking revenge. I was seeking record. The truth needed to live somewhere. It couldn't be rewritten by gossip or pity. His plea dissolved into quiet acceptance. The next morning, Ava arrived, pale and desperate, begging me to believe she hadn't known about the stolen money. Her story was fragile, built on selective memory and misplaced innocence. I opened my laptop and showed her the hotel invoices that matched Paul's withdrawals, each one booked under her name. Her face drained of color. She wasn't just a bystander. She was the bridge between theft and betrayal. When she left, I stood by the window, watching her drive away. For the first time, I felt no rage, no satisfaction, only clarity. Paul thought I had trapped him, but the truth was simpler. He'd built the cage himself, bar by bar, and all I did was hand him the key that proved it. The hearing took place in a small municipal courtroom with beige walls and flickering lights, nothing grand, nothing cinematic, just bureaucracy in its purest form. Paul sat beside his lawyer, shoulders hunched, the image of a man who finally understood the difference between embarrassment and accountability. The prosecutor read the findings: $82,000 misappropriated from both private and charitable funds. When the gavel struck, Paul Ridley was sentenced to restitution and 2 years of supervised community service. His title, his pension, and his reputation were all revoked before the clock struck noon. Ava was next to face her own reckoning. The hospital's internal review confirmed she had falsified her shift records to hide personal travel, violating ethics policies. Her nursing license was suspended for 6 months, and the apartment she and Daniel rented under joint income was repossessed after she lost her job. Daniel filed for divorce the following week. Watching him sign those papers, I saw not anger but relief, the quiet liberation that comes from choosing truth over legacy. As for the Veterans Relief Fund, they issued a public statement outlining new safeguards and compliance measures. My name was listed at the bottom as consultant for procedural reform. I asked for no credit beyond that line. Justice, I'd learned, doesn't need applause, it only needs documentation. The same townspeople who once whispered that I'd lost my mind now crossed the street to shake my hand. I didn't gloat. Vindication isn't victory, it's simply balance restored. Daniel moved into a small house near the edge of town, close enough for weekend dinners but far enough to breathe freely. His company promoted him, and a new bonus of $12,000 landed in an account under his name alone. He laughed when he told me, saying he finally felt like an adult. I kept his old keychain, the one with the farm equipment logo, on my dresser. A reminder that even after fires, fields can regrow. 6 months later, I stood on the stage of the community playhouse, changing the poster for our upcoming season. The old one read, Lessons in Trust. The new one said, Second Seeds. I'd used the first restitution check from Paul's account to repair the stage lights. In the drawer beneath them lay his engraved pocket watch, redeemed but unwound. I didn't keep it as a trophy, I kept it as evidence. Because sometimes the bravest thing a woman can do is let the truth stand where love once lived. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If it struck a chord or reminded you of your own battles, share your thoughts. Below your voice matters here. Don't forget to subscribe for more true-to-life stories of justice, strength, and redemption. Until next time, take care of your peace.